This and your defense mechanism, considered one of the super high yield, folks, okay? With both transference, countertransference with defense, easily 6 to 8 questions on the exam, okay? That's a lot of defense mechanism question comes. So let's talk about transference first, okay? Now, if you see here, transference is patient project feeling about formative or other important person into physician, okay? So it says psychiatrist is seen as a parent. You see, sometimes what happens, folks, we look at somebody's elder than us, and we tell them, oh, that person is like my father to me, right? We use that. These are not pathology, okay? Keep in mind, this is a physiological behavior. We do that, okay? So that's transference. So that is usually, there are 2 ways you could explain. Junior looking at the senior, so the young person looking at the elderly person and tell that person is like my brother, that person is like my father. So that's the idea. Here in this example, the person is looking at the psychiatrist as a parent. Is everybody clear, folks? So the second way to explain, patient is looking at the doctor, okay? Is patient looking at the doctor. So it's a patient's response, in another word. Transference is how a patient's look at it. Is everybody clear, folks? That's important, because when I show you the question, it's going to be very confusing, okay? So every time a patient looking at the physician, then that's transference. In response to that, there is something called countertransference. Physician project feeling about formative or other important person into the patient. Patient reminds physician of a younger sibling. It happens, right? Sometimes we say somebody, it happened to me. I see some young boy, he looks like my younger brother. They always get some special treatment then, right? I mean, that's a reality, right? So that's countertransference. So countertransference is always, write it down, health care provider response. Where did I go? It's a healthcare provider response, folks, okay? Healthcare provider. You know, in US, we don't use any more doctor, right? They call it a healthcare provider. When you call the companies, insurance companies, it's like, if you're a healthcare provider, press 1. These things. Once I call, I thought it's somebody else and I pressed the wrong thing. I didn't know in the beginning. They were like, no, doctors are called healthcare provider. So it's a healthcare provider's response towards the patient, okay? Towards the patient. Is everybody clear, folks? So that's the idea. So that's transference and countertransference, very important. Next, defense mechanisms. Now, this is also physiology, okay? When we go through each of the example, you will feel like, okay, I do this because it's normal, it's not pathology. Okay, we all use this in our life as a defense. That means to protect us from the external environment. Okay, so that's defense mechanism, folks. Okay, now first one, acting out. Some of the example is good, but some of them is not. Acting out is basically the better way to explain subconsciously coping with stress or emotional conflict using an action rather than the feeling. So the best way, temper tantrum, that's the best example. The temper tantrum, right? The kids. What are they doing? Like, so some kids asking for an iPad, a good example, and you say no. They scream. What do? No, we are not giving it. They scream again. You give it. That's what happens in the house, right? So because you're like, I want to get it done with it, just give the iPad, right? Look at that. Livia knows what I'm talking about, right? So for me, I don't even let my kid to go through temper tantrum. As soon as you come, here you go, your iPad. Shut up and sit. That's all. No, I'm kidding. You know. So the idea is that's temper tantrum. So what did the kid do? They wanted something. Instead of asking, they're showing an action to get it. Is that clear, folks? That's temper tantrum, folks. Okay. So that's that. So you want something and you get it through an action. Okay. This example is not the best, folks. Okay. It says the patient skips therapy appointment after deep discomfort from dealing with in the past. I wouldn't say. Write it down, temper tantrum. That's the best example for acting out. All good, folks? That's acting out. Okay. Don't think only kids do. Adults do too sometimes. Okay. So that's acting out. Next, denial. Look at the human response. Anything that we get something we don't like it, we always deny first, isn't it? A good example, you take an NBME, you see the score. That's not the score you want. What do? You close it and you reopen it, right? Tell me you guys have not done this. Oh, you click the reevaluate button to see if it is recorrecting and changing. You know that when they change, the score won't change, right? We all do that because you know why? Your brain deny that because it's not what you wanted to see. Is everybody clear, folks? That's denial, right? It's an avoiding awareness of some painful reality, right? So that's called denial, folks, okay? That's the idea, right? Now, if you look at this, this is a good example. A patient with cancer plan a full-time work schedule despite being warned of significant fatigue during chemo. So this patient has a cancer, it's going to start chemo. We tell the patient, you need to stop working because chemo is going to make you more fatigued. Don't go to work. But these people deny that they have a cancer. It's all in their brain, folks. They know they have a cancer, but they deny that they have it, and they still continue to do the work. Is everybody clear, folks? Right? I have a person, I still see, this person is a diabetic, very bad diabetic, has macular degeneration, okay? So macular degeneration in the eye, that means very soon that person will become fully blind, okay? Very soon will become fully blind. So we tell them not to work. The patient still continue to work because the patient knows the problem, but still deny that, oh, I don't have anything. Is everybody clear, folks? That's a denial effect, okay? So that's denial. So acting out and denial. The third one, displacement. This is important. Now, before we start displacement involve either 3 objects or 3 people or 3 that involve objects and C, okay? So it has to be 3 different things. So good example is, it says here, redirection of emotions or impulses to a neutral person or object, okay? So here you could see the example of the same thing. So let's say I am mad at my wife. So my wife and myself, 2 people, and I come and I see a receptionist on my office. I just yelled at her for no reason. How many people involved here? 3 people. Is that clear, folks? Right? And then let's say you guys studying for steps, you look at the UWorld, you get it wrong, and you break the computer because you're frustrated. UWorld, you, and the computer, 3 things. Does that make sense, folks? So displacement involves 3 objects or 3 people. Is everybody clear, folks? That's the idea, okay? That's displacement. And look at, this is a good example too, right? After being hurt by her principal, frustrated teacher returns home and criticizes her wife's cooking instead of confronting the principal. Here, the principal, you cannot say anything to principal and you just come and take it on a neutral person because they won't do anything back. That's the idea here, folks, right? In the hospital, program director yells at the resident. Resident cannot say anything back to the PD. Who do you think the resident takes it on? Students who are doing rotations. That's it. That's it. Exactly, right? So that's exactly. So that's why you don't talk to residents when they come from the meeting with the boss. I don't. I go to cafeteria and sit for half an hour because it will come to you because you are the direct contacts afterwards, okay? So that's displacement. You have to be very careful because we're going to talk another defense mechanism called projection, which only involves 2 people. Okay, so that's why I keep adding the number 3 versus 2. So everybody clear, folks? All right. Now, since we just did that, let's go talk about projection on the next page quickly. Projection means you are projecting something that you feel into another person. Okay, it's exactly the same thing. So let's say a good example. Right now, we are sitting here. I'm hungry. Okay, so who's hungry here? I am hungry. I'm going to tell Livia is hungry, right? So who's the actual hungry person? It's me. I'm just putting exact my feeling onto her. So that's called projecting. Is that clear, folks? So that's projection. How many people involved here? 2 people. Okay, projection is always involved 2 people, folks. Okay, that's the idea. We project. I had my classmate in medical school who sits next to me. he plays video games when the lecture goes on his computer. That's what he does. And then he will forget something. Every time he wants to ask, he will raise the hand and he will say, Roy has a question, right? And then the professor looks at me like I don't pay attention, right? Now, the idea is what he's doing is a pure projection. Is that clear, folks? He is the one who wants to ask the question, but he put it on me. So that's projection. Is everybody clear? All right. So that's the idea. Now let's go back. Next one, dissociation here, folks. When you talk about dissociation, right? Now, a good example here, look at it. A survival of a sexual abuse sees the abuser and suddenly becomes numb and detached, okay? So here, it's basically avoiding any emotional stress, right? Now, the best example, if you've seen some documentary on the TVs, when they interview the person who got abused, the person, they will talk like they have no emotion. It's like a machine talk, right? They will continuously talk. They won't cry. They won't do, it's like one monotone they talk. That's called dissociation. They are differentiating their own feeling and they just keep talking it. Is everybody clear, folks? That's dissociation, folks, okay? It's a temporary. At that time, they do that. So that's dissociation, as the word explains. Next, fixation. Partially remaining at a more childish level of development. Okay. It's a partially child. I don't like this example. It says a college student studying for a stressful exam begins sucking her thumb. That's not the really best one. If you have an old first aid book, there's another example in that book. It says the surgeon is mad at everyone in the OR because the last case is running late. Do you guys have that? So that's a good example. What does that mean? Let's say if I'm a surgeon and I'm doing a surgery, right? When we start a surgery, we don't know when the surgery will finish. Let's say, for example, I'm going for laparoscopic cholecystectomy. It's about an hour. After we start the surgery, we realize we cannot do laparoscopic. We have to do open cholecystectomy, which is about 3 hours now. So my 1 hour has become 3 hours. This is nobody's mistake. It's the nature of the surgery. Is that clear, folks? But then what I'm doing, I'm irritated because it's going for a longer time. And I started yelling at the resident, everybody in the AR, that I'm yelling at them. So there's no reason for me to yell at them because it's not their mistakes. It's nobody's mistake. It's the nature of the surgery. I'm just being more childish and yelling at everybody when there is no mistake. Is everybody clear, folks? That's fixation, okay? That's a good example for fixation. All good? Okay. Next one, idealization, right? Now, we always like someone in a role model, right? You see somebody and you wanted to become like that, right? So when we try to become like that person, what do? We try to behave like that person, right? One is that. Number two, we always take somebody's good and bad, okay? So when we like someone, folks, we only take their positive things and we ignore the negative things, right? We always do that, right? So you like some guys and then, you go to your parents and you only tell the good things about that person. Never tell anything about bad, right? That's a reality. We do that, right? That's actually a good thing, idealization. So I am taking the good things of somebody and ignoring the negative part. Look at this. A patient boasts about his physician and his accomplishment while ignoring any flaws, right? Like I have a favorite attending who's my favorite professor. I would only talk about his success. I would not talk about his failure. Does that make sense, folks? I shouldn't be, right? So that's idealization, okay? Now I use the word role model. It's not really role model. That's the next one. The idealization is basically taking the positive things and ignoring the negative things. Is everybody clear, folks? Okay. Now, identification. That's the one that we find a role model and we started behaving like that person. Okay, we try to copy that person, right? Look at this. A resident start putting her stethoscope in her pocket like her favorite attending instead of wearing around the neck because you see somebody that's this is normal, folks. I see some doctors and I say, you know what, I like to be like that. Okay, I watched the House episode and I try to behave like Dr. House with my nurses. They were ready to shoot me. They were like, don't talk like that. I was like, okay, I know. It feels cool to talk like him, right? Be a jerk, but no. So the idea is you started becoming, that's what called identification, folks, right? That's the way to identify. All right. That's 3. 4th one, intellectualization. This is both favorite, okay? I see it. I'm told that they get this question. Look at the word intellectualization, right? So what's happening? People are getting into more intellectualized to avoid the emotion, using fact and logic to emotionally distance oneself from the stressful situation. Okay, look at the example. A patient diagnosed with cancer discussed the pathophysiology of the disease. Now remember, if you are a normal person, you are diagnosed with a cancer, what would you think next? What treatment do I have? How long I'm going to survive? That should be your normal response, isn't it, folks? What these people do, they're not going to worry about it, but they're going to ask the physician which microscope you use, what's the statistics of this positive. They're going more intellectual into the issue rather than worrying about anything. So the step 1 question that recently came, the question I was told that patient had a cancer and the patient is questioning about type of microscope, what type of magnification they use. See, they're going more intellectualized about that. Does that make sense, folks? So that's intellectualization instead of worrying. Another example I could create, sometime I have students, they ask me, who's the person write the USMLE question? What's their background? What's their qualification? How do they write this question? That's intellectualization. Study the damn concept and pass the exam.
So
We shouldn't worry about who they are and what type of qualification. See, that means we are being more intellectualized. Is that clear, folks? That is what we call intellectualization. Okay. Somebody had a question.
Yes, Doctor. So will they give any options like being narcissist or like
no, that is not being narcissistic. You are going into intellectualized, right? Narcissistic means that you behave like you know everything. Is that clear? This is not that.
I think there was one that has a lot of questions they keep asking. So this patient who had cancer was looking for the microscope. Was he getting suspicious about the stuff?
No. Here it's not about the suspicious, right? Remember, here the person wants to avoid the emotion. That's different than getting suspicious. So here literally we are worrying about intellectualization. Okay?
Okay, got it.
So that's that, folks, intellectualization. Okay. Are we clear here? All right. Last one, isolation of affect. Separation of feeling from ideas and events. It's like, remember when I ask you questions, sometimes you guys keep that face, like no reaction on your face. That's called isolation of affect. Okay. So now if you see here, describing a murder in graphic detail with no emotional response. Some people are there, folks. Like if you ask them something, they will tell you without any emotions. Like let's say, for example, if you see a 4-year-old kid getting hit by a car in front of you and die right in front of you, when you say it, I'm sure tears will come out of your eye, isn't it, folks? But there are people who will tell like a video magics, or this is how it happened. They have no emotions. So that's called isolation of affect. They talk without any emotions. Okay, so that's that. Is everybody clear?
Can you explain how that would be different from dissociation? Because I'm still...
Yeah, very good question. Dissociation has happened to them. Isolation as affect is not happening to them. They saw something and as a second person, they are talking. So the dissociation is they are their own victim. It happened to them. Okay, so that's a different. Next, passive aggression. That's my favorite. What is passive aggression, folks? Like if you see here, disgruntled employees repeatedly late to work but won't admit is a way to get back at the manager. So you are mad at somebody, instead of yelling at them, you just wait for the right time to come so you could take it on them where they cannot find the mistakes on you. Is that clear, folks? So that's passive aggression, right? They are very polite and everything nice. They won't yell at you, they won't say anything, but they do something to get back their anger out. That's passive aggression, folks, okay? Then we have projection, we just talked about it. Now, let's take an example, right? So let's say I'm telling one of the students, let's say Carrie, I'm telling her to study cardiology this Saturday, for example, okay? So her job is to study cardiology. she did not study anything on that Saturday. And when I talk to her on Monday, she will tell me a reason why she didn't study. That is an excuse, because she gave me an excuse for why not. Okay, is everybody clear, folks? So she gave me a reason for why she didn't do an action. No action happened in this. Is everybody clear, folks? So whenever we are supposed to do something and we didn't do it, we give a reason for it. That's called excuse. But the next one, let's say I'm telling her to do cardiology, but she ended up studying neurology this Saturday. When I ask her, why did you study neurology instead of cardiology? She will give me a reason for an action that happened. Is that clear, folks? That's called rationalization. So you are trying to rationalize for something that you did. Is that clear, folks? Anytime we give a reason for something we did, it's called rationalization. So that means the action is already done. Action happened. If you are giving a reason for something that didn't happen, that's an excuse. Is everybody clear, folks? So that's the idea. Okay, so always careful to differentiate rationalization from the excuse. Okay, so always something. Now look at here, folks, the best example. Somebody goes and shoots someone, and then when you ask the person, why did you shoot him? And he gives a reason. He did something bad. This is what he deserves. So he's giving me a reason for something he did. Is that clear, folks? That's rationalizing. So he's trying to make his point right. So he's trying to rationalize himself for something what he did. Is everybody clear, folks? That's the idea. Okay. Okay, so that's rationalization, folks. Very careful. Now, next, reaction formation, both favorite. Reaction formation, careful, here you will get confused. The way reaction formation works, I have something inside of my mind, but I do completely opposite when I'm doing it in the action. Let me give you a good example. I love drinking alcohol, but when I talk that alcohol is bad, don't drink. You see, my inside, I like it, but I'm talking completely 100-degree opposite, isn't it, folks? So that's called reaction formation. So we do completely opposite to what we think inside. See, the alcohol example is the best example. Okay. Now here you could see another example. A stepfather treats a child he resents with excessive nutrition and overprotection, right? He doesn't like the kid, but he's behaving like he cares about that kid. Completely opposite, isn't it, folks? So you could write it down. You basically do opposite to what you think inside. This person liked to smoke, talk like smoking is bad for your lungs and all these things. So they are doing completely opposite. That's a reaction formation. Is everybody clear, folks? Okay, that's the idea. You could see that. Replacing a warded-off idea or feeling with an emphasis on its opposite. Okay, so we do completely opposite, folks. Okay, I would say, like, I hate first aid book, but when I talk, I'll be like, oh, first aid book is the best book. That's literally a reaction formation. Is that clear, folks? All right. So that's that. Next, regression. Regression is basically involuntarily turning back the maturational clock and behave like a kid. Look at that. This is a very good example. It's a kid, folks, okay? A previously toilet-trained child begins bedwetting again following the birth of sibling. It's an attention problem, right? They just want attention because they see the new one getting more attention, so they also try to do that. Okay, so that's regression, folks. Okay, you behave like a kid. That's the idea. Okay, so
could you explain that in relation to fixation? Because I think I'm confused. Yeah, I don't get that.
Fixation is basically, I'm just frustrated at people for nobody's mistake, right? They are partially remaining childish level, right? So in another word, the good example, think about that surgeon story. I'm yelling at everybody for no reason. It's nobody's mistake. But in here, regression, I am actually behaving like a kid. I'm going even more younger age. Okay, so look at this. Previously toilet trained kid, the person knows how to do it, but now they pretend like they don't know that. That's regression. Okay, so when you have a regression, you have some object. You have a birth of a sibling, so you do it. But when it comes to fixation, you cannot find anything on anybody. You are just frustrated. Is that clear, folks? That's the other one. Now, I'll come to repression. But let's do splitting. Splitting is the other important one, folks, okay? It's very important, splitting, because splitting associated with diseases. But at this point, it's physiology. What is splitting? I simply say it's black and white. Okay, there are people who's black and white. For example, I think iPhone is the best, Samsung sucks. That's my opinion, okay? See, for me, Apple is best, Samsung is bad. Kerry is agreeing with me. See, that we are black and white, right? So that's either this or that. You see, it's a black and white. There is no gray zone in the middle. Does that make sense, folks? Some people will say Apple is also good, Samsung is also good. They both phone, right? They are in the gray zone. They are in the middle, right? Splitting means two different extremes. If you see a patient or somebody tells you this person is the best, no matter what you tell them, according to them, this person is the best. That's black and white, no gray zones. Is that clear, folks? Now you could see an example. A patient says that all the nurses are cold and insensitive, but all the physicians are warm and friendly. See, according to that patient, doctors are the best, nurses are bad. You cannot change that, folks. If you try to change their mind, you will be wasting your time, because when people have splitting, they are fixed with what they want to think. Is everybody clear, folks? Right? So that splitting, okay, everything, it's either all good or all bad. That's why you can't think about it black or white. There is no gray zone in the middle. Are we clear, folks? There's a personality disorder. It's called borderline personality disorder. They use this as a defense mechanism. Okay, so sometime in the exam, what they do, they will give you a scenario. So your first step is to identify its borderline personality. And after you identify the second step, these patients use which of the following defense mechanisms? Answer is splitting. Okay, that's splitting, folks. Okay, we'll talk about personality disorder, but that is splitting. Is everybody clear? All right. Now, I want you guys to connect repression and suppression. Look at the repression, folks. Okay, first, repression is involuntary. Okay, they don't even know it's happening. Okay, it's an involuntary effect. 20-year-old does not remember going to counseling during his parents' divorce 10 years ago. Sometimes something happens in these people's life, our lives, way long back, that we forgot that it even happened. Until something reminds you, you won't even think about it. Is that clear, folks? That's called repression, right? This person forgot that went to counseling 10 years ago. So when do you remember? When some conversation or some incident happens similar to that, you will start thinking, yeah, it happened like that to me also. So that's called repression. Is everybody clear, folks? So when you have a repression, you forgot that, but then you don't remember that you forgot. Is everybody clear, folks? Now, when it comes to suppression, it's not like that. It's an intentional forgetting. You say, let's say today's a Friday. All right, Saturday, Sunday, I'm going to enjoy the rest. I'm not going to think about step one until Monday morning. So you don't want to think about step one until Monday morning, but you are voluntarily telling your brain you don't want to think about it. Is everybody clear, folks? And then you will drive by somewhere and you will see a first page, things will come back, right? So that's the idea, folks. That's suppression. It's intentional withholding, okay? I'll give you the best example that came on the exam. After that, it's on your word now. The student took a step one exam. That's a question. The student took a step one exam and she decided not to worry about the scoring because whatever happens, happened. And she's not going to think about the score until the score comes. That's a suppression because she voluntarily doesn't want to think about it because it's whatever done is done, right? So that is suppression. So make sure one is intentional, the other one is unintentional. Everybody clear, folks?
Is repression a milder form of disassociation?
Which one?
Repression and disassociation. Is repression a milder form?
Dissociation is basically something happened to them and they are talking the numb, like avoiding the emotion. Repression is not necessarily a negative effect. Something happened to them in their life, they actually forgot that it happened. That's what it is. Okay. So that's that. Now next, sublimation. Sublimation, to make it simple, something unofficial, you make it official. Something that unofficial, you are making it official. That's my version of explanation. What does that mean? Something like to punch people. You cannot just walk on the street and start punching, and they become a professional boxer. If you become a professional boxer, now you can punch, right? Does that make sense? So unofficial to official. Somebody clear focus. Somebody like cut human body, become a pathologist. Right. Something unofficial, becoming official. Somebody clear focus. That's exactly what it is, right? So that's the idea. See, replacing an unacceptable, which of course action similar to but socially acceptable. You see that. Something unacceptable. Okay, so that's the idea. I don't like the first one, but that's sublimation. Something unofficial made official. So very clear, folks. Okay, remember the box. I think that's the best example. Next one, altruism. I think that example explains. A mafia boss make a large donation to charity. Why do you want to give money to charity? Because they know what you can away by giving half. You feel about it, isn't it? So you kind of tell these guys I don't know they charity, isn't it, folks? That's I'll be negative feeling by generosity. That's all it is. Okay. Robin Hood. That's right. So that's all folks. Next one, humor. It's basically because there's no jokes about boats. So what humor is basically you are trying to do something to relax yourself. So they are doing this to keep their anxiety low. Okay. So that's humor. Okay. They always themselves out to keep it, and that's like humor. I have to ask how do you differentiate sublimation from altruism? Sublimation is making unofficial to official. That's different. Altruism is you are just sharing something to make up some negative. Is that clear? That's it. I have no relationship even confused. Sublimation is very different from altruism. Okay. So they are not doing anything wrong in sublimation. They just like something they are making it official. That's how you differentiate. Write it down. Undoing. There's one more different cancel. You need to know this. Undoing. Okay. The name makes sense. I'll give you an example. This morning, I didn't think properly. I yelled at my receptionist for no reason. I realized after that it was my mistake. I shouldn't have yelled at her. But when I come tomorrow morning, I'll buy her a coffee. So what did I just do? By buying a coffee, I tried to make it up for the mistake I did yesterday. Clear, folks. That's all undoing. I didn't yell at nobody today. Make an example. Okay. So that's undoing. So the example aspect, right? A good example that I wrote on a question. It's like attention, misunderstanding, being mean, when she comes next time, she buys chocolate and happiness. That's undoing. You did something, you realize it was a mistake, and now you're trying to make it up. Sincerely, I want to say sorry. I just want to give something. Clear, folks. That's undoing. You see something I did, I'm trying to undo that. That's the idea. So clear, folks. So that's your defense mechanism. Now, these are all defense mechanisms we easily expect and put 4 to 6 questions on your exam. And I have a bunch of questions. We're not going to do it today, but we'll review what we have done today. Reproductive, LHS, tomorrow morning we'll probably start with the questions of defense mechanism, and we're gonna go through all the categories. These are very interesting folks, but that's pretty much. And if you have any question in defense, you could also ask me tomorrow. Okay. Any questions for me?
What's the difference between mature defense and